Okay. Thank you very much, Robert, and the organization for inviting me, and thanks to the brave people that are staying until the end of the conference. I've been attending most of the time, the sessions on number 2 on social media, democracy, etc., because that relates more to the work that we do at the Web Foundation and at my program at the Foundation called Digital Citizenship. And I took some notes and reflected on the report and the discussions and the work that we do. And there was this main theme, of the conference, of the event on the online and offline worlds, that are blurring. And what is the kind of world that do we want? That's my question. Technology, as we heard many times, over these 2 days, has the ability to revolutionize our society. And it can flatten hierarchies, it can open up opportunities, and it can change power dynamics. But the benefits of technology are not automatic. Right now, the web reflects the world that we have, but not the world that we want. It's predominantly white, well-educated, affluent men who are accruing the most benefits from technology and the web. So instead of leveling the playing field, the haves are becoming the have-mores, and I will explain this. So first, the traditionally privileged groups are more likely to be online. In the EU, countries like Sweden and Denmark enjoy internet penetration rates of 95% or higher, but in other countries, such as Bulgaria or Romania, 1/3 of the population, or even a little bit more, is still offline. At the Web Foundation, we have a report that we typically release every year that is called the Affordability Drivers Index. And we studied there, it was well beyond the European Union. It goes specifically on low and middle income countries, across Asia, Africa, Latin America. And what we found out is that you are more likely to be online if you live in a city, are young and male. And this leaves rural residents, women, and older age groups behind in the new economy. Last year, for example, the Sustainable Development Goals set a target of universal internet access by 2020. But at the current trends that we are observing, we will miss this target by more than 2 decades. So that's one of the issues that I've spotted on the discussions. The other, related to this is that the usual suspects are benefiting from job creation in new tech industries. There was quite some talk about this one. For example, we have an office in London. A recent survey in London of startups showed that almost 80% of the founders are white men. And census data only shows that 45% of London residents identify as white British. This is an improvement on a similar survey in other countries like the US, where up to 95% of the respondents were identified as white. But there is clearly a lot of work to be done to get other groups, into the mainstream. For example, other figures that we collected, venture capitalists in the US alone invested $1.4 billion in female-led companies compared to $58.2 billion in male-led companies. So there is an important gender gap there. The digital inequality gap starts early on at a young age, and the effects are compounded throughout their lives. Schools in wealthy districts and countries are more likely to have computer science courses, are more likely to offer the latest technology and digital skills to their students, and are more likely to push students toward careers in technology. And that's another thing that we have to keep in mind. We have to understand what the root cause of the problem is. Instead of using technology to close the gender gap, we are at the risk of entrenching it. For example, we have an initiative across the whole of the foundation that is called the Women's Rights Online, where we studied 10 emerging cities all over the world, where we found out that women were up to 50% less likely to be online than men, less likely to speak out online, and less likely to use the web to look for a job. And if you look at, this conference, for example, and it's very, very usual at conferences, unfortunately, barely 1/3 of the speakers were women. And gender equality was only mentioned that I could find, and apologies if I'm mistaken, in one sentence in the 45-page background report. There is no dedicated mention, and I think I would really suggest that this is, taken into consideration and added, to erase the gender gap in STEM education and skills on the number of women in the STEM careers. That's very important in my opinion. So looking at some of these trends is sobering, but some citizens in the same country may be using self-driving cars, while their compatriots are not even online yet. As jobs are automated, and we had some discussions about that, and the new digital industries become the leading sources of employment, women around the world may fall farther behind instead of charging ahead if we don't address these disparities now. So how do we change this? Because it's not all about the problem. I can also offer some solutions. In my opinion, to build the world we want, we must build the web we want. This is what we do at the Web Foundation. So I don't know if any of you were watching the opening ceremony of the London Olympics a few years ago. There was this weird guy in the middle of the stadium, that popped up from inside a house with a strange black computer. And that was our founder, Sir Tim Berners-Lee. And he sent a message to everyone where he said, this is for everyone, with this referring to the world of the web and the internet. We strongly believe in this, and all of our strategy, is directed towards achieving what we call digital equality, a world where everyone has the same rights and opportunities as the ideal future we are fighting for. We want a web where citizens are included in government's planning for the digital future. So it is very exciting to see exercises like this, including the survey. Well, there is a direct consultation with the citizens. We have to be careful, and we mentioned this many times over the 2 days, about the echo chambers. Numerous places, numerous discussions that I heard in different sessions. And they are still, happening in the offline world. I can tell you a personal experience of mine, at the European Commission. I used to be part of the expert groups on electronic government not many years ago. I remember when we were discussing the Horizon 2020, what were the main, themes, topics that should be funded. And I remember, there was a lady from a government representative from a European country that was telling me, look, I was yesterday working on my email, and then I have a grandson, a teenager, that was looking over my shoulder, and he was telling me, what are you using there? Oh, I see, it's that thing for grannies. This guy didn't know how to use it, was not interested in how to use it, because he was a millennial, he was a digital native. He was not he had no interest in that. So these are the people, that we refer to, a number of times during this conference, but are not in the room, are typically not part of the discussions. So it's good that we have surveys on which we can query people directly, but we have to make an extra effort, in my opinion, because these are the people that, will join the parliament in the future, will join the governments in the future, etc., and will drive the world in the end. So we have to be careful also about other things, and Maria mentioned this very recently. The decisions made by algorithms have to be accountable, transparent, and algorithms should be unbiased. Citizens have to take back control of their personal data, and they have the right to know how it's used. It's something that is very, very difficult to address, I know, but it's something that we need to strongly fight for. The GDPR is a good start in this direction, in my opinion. But we need to understand what factors are taken into consideration when we are considered for loans, jobs, universities, and other things in life. So I think that we need the right, to question the decisions made by those machines, to be frank. I think it would be unfair otherwise. And we need all to work together, because what I learned recently at a conference here in Brussels like a month ago or so with all the digital rights experts, called RightsCon, is that we are yet to properly define the problems. So it's very difficult to say, okay, this is the solution that I have today, because we don't know exactly how, what the problem looks like. And there was some discussion over the last 2 days about the need for more research, and I totally support that. I think we need to better understand these things before trying to pose, good solutions to them. As I mentioned before, we want a world in which women and men benefit equally. I mentioned a number of times that already. I think that also, Mariette mentioned this, a web on which everyone can freely express their views without fear of censorship or unwarranted public surveillance. We've seen very concerning moves. For example, the recent Investigatory Powers Act in the UK that has a chilling effect on free speech, in our opinion, and that there are measures that, to us, they look like are only surpassed by undemocratic regimes, to be frank. So we have to keep on fighting, for that freedom of expression online. And we must also be careful of turning some of the platforms, the Facebooks and Googles of this world, as the arbiters of truth and to make decisions on our behalf. Finally, there is something that has been mentioned, a number of times in relation to all these new areas of work, all these new technologies, which is, the fake news. This is a point of reflection, in my opinion, for all of us. What are we doing, what is our own behavior in this new world of data abundance? Sometimes people are worried about fake news or the new topic or the new description or concept that is called alternative facts. Is this something that really exists, or are we talking about pure damn lies? So when I was, for example, one of the issues that we have nowadays is that it's very, very difficult to distinguish, what is true and what is not, given the amount of information and given how good some of the bad guys are behaving and faking some of the real, actions of the real things, by themselves. One of the issues that we have is that we cannot go back in time. When I was really young, I was like 10 years old. My dad typically, I'm Spanish, I still live in Spain. We didn't have so many newspapers, but my dad typically on a Sunday were, buying the 5 main newspapers in the country, laying them out on the table, on the kitchen table for me, and looking at the same news item on every single newspaper to see how they were reporting on a particular news item. So you could spot the different, views of the different newspapers, what they're, in different occasions, how, related to their political orientation or their independence, whatnot. Nowadays, it's very, very, very difficult to do that online. But please keep that in mind. I mean, are we ourselves contributing to that? Are we retweeting links that we don't even read or open, for example? Do we know if we are saying, it's true, or we have no clue, and we are just interested in just, contributing to the famous echo chamber that we mentioned before? So basically, all the, and I will conclude here, all the issues that have been discussed, over the last 2 days are extremely important. Unfortunately, difficult to understand and difficult to address. But I think, we are laying out the groundwork for doing so in the near future. So basically, just to conclude, we believe at the Web Foundation, as I said before, in digital equality, and we believe it is a choice, actually. But we have to choose it, and choose it properly. Thanks.
Thank you very much. With Roberto's arrival on the podium, we will have the final team in full order. And I would like, if you allow, John, although you've only just been able to join us, to turn to you next, and then to Lukas Ilves for the Estonian incoming presidency, and finally to give the last word to my colleague Roberto. So, John Franks, you have the floor.